or die, comply or die, comply.
Welcome to GRC Uncensored, a new podcast designed to elevate real conversations with GRC professionals, auditors, regulators, and those building programs around it. Your hosts Troy Fine and Kendra Cooley, alongside producer Elliot Volkman, guide unfiltered discussions that dig into the reality of how governance, risk, and compliance function, rather than the rose-colored perspective that's fueled by millions in marketing spend. Now, onto your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to GRC Uncensored. I'm your producer, Elliot Volkman, alongside your co-host, Kendra Cooley, and Mr. Troy Fine, or TJ, if we are friends with him, but apparently some of us are. I'm not, so I don't get to call him TJ. But today we have a fantastic guest, the founder and president of KirkpatrickPrice. We have Mr. Joseph Kirkpatrick. And with that, Kendra, I'm going to lead this over to you. Maybe you want to expand on some introductions, set the stage for, I don't know, TJ, did you call it a battle royale? Sorry, Troy, did you call it a battle royale? Yeah, Kendra,
no,
where are we going with this?
But
yeah, just to kind of set the stage. I mean, we have been having a lot of conversations lately around like SOC 2 and kind of the impact of the commoditization of, these SOC in a box platforms, as we like to call them around here. And I think the reason that we wanted to have Joseph on here is to get his perspective as the founder and president of one of these audit firms on how these SOC in a box platforms have negatively or positively impacted your business. So I think this will be a pretty juicy topic. Joseph, do you have anything to add?
Well, first of all, I'm just looking forward to this 7-part series that we're doing with me as the guest, because I have enough content on this to cover about 7 sessions. So I hope everybody stays with us and listens to all of it. But yeah, no, I love talking about this. The market is so interesting to me. The things that have changed since approximately 2020, it's really livened things up and it's made it more interesting. And so I'm appreciative of that. But probably nothing that I can think of except maybe Sarbanes-Oxley, kind of spurred on a lot of new blood in the SAS 70 world back then. But probably nothing else has impacted our industry as much as the SOC in a box providers. And I don't necessarily say that it's just that particular service. I like to blame private equity. Any service, any segment that starts getting that funding, it changes things. And this happened with medical providers. So if we just focus on professionally licensed practitioners, such as myself and Troy here, there's a special kind of responsibility when you're professionally licensed. When you hire a contractor for your house, you want to make sure they're licensed, because you don't have that ability to go back and deal with complaints and issues around quality and, legal requirements and things like that. And, private equity really hurt the medical industry the same way. So many of my friends who are doctors are like, oh man, I sold my practice. Now it's all about the dollars and cents. I can't deliver the care that I'm used to giving. Utah became the first state that allowed private equity to be behind attorneys. And now state by state, they're allowing non-attorneys to own. And so it's very similar with what's happening here. Professionally licensed auditors, certified public accountants, were the ones responsible for this. And now the conversation has shifted. The money from private equity has fueled advertising and development and influence to the point that people think now, oh, these are the people that we should talk to about getting our SOC audit. And so that, to me, is the biggest driver of the negative impact to our industry.
Interesting. Yeah. So the marketing dollars is something that we've spent a little bit of time talking about on this podcast. Which company was it that did the old SOC to make SOC lesser? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So is that kind of what you're talking about in terms of like the marketing dollars going towards those big advertisements? So now when people think of SOC or SOC 2, they're going right to those big name brands versus kind of maybe going directly to a CPA firm such as KirkpatrickPrice.
Absolutely. I mean, think about any marketing statistic or study you want to look at. Advertising has an effect. And so even if the thing isn't true. Like I remember, was it Volvo who was considered like the safest vehicle? Was that who it was?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so another automobile manufacturer put out a study like showing that they were the safest, but nobody cared because the advertising, the branding had done such a good job that, it doesn't matter what you're saying. You can say that, SOC 2 can take 2 weeks. SOC 2 can be fully automated. SOC 2 can be, cheaper and faster, whatever. Even if that's not true, the advertising has an effect. And that's what the funding does, from private equity. So like today, I did a Google, and this is the change. I Googled SOC 2 audit. And so the first thing that I get is an AI overview. That's another topic. That's another podcast that we can do because the thing that it explains about the SOC 2 process is not correct. But anyway, after that, we've got ad after ad, right? And it goes Strata, Securacy, Vanta, A-Line, Secure Frame, Audit Board, Vanta, A-Line, AICPA. So let's just stop there for a second. The people who publish the guide that contains the standards for performing these engagements is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th on the list. And so if you listened to the terms or the results that I gave, the majority was a software firm. It's a company that's built a tool to help you organize your data. And that's what's driving the conversation in a different direction. That money that's funding, like I can't afford the Google ads anymore. I did Google ads from 2007 to 2021, I think. And I would spend maybe $5,000 a month on that. But it got to the point that I couldn't, first of all, I didn't want the results anymore because everybody who was doing that were the people who were wanting faster and cheaper. And it just wasn't the market that I wanted anymore. But secondly, I just couldn't afford it because I don't have the private equity money. I'm not going to have the private equity money. And so all of that funding is driving the conversation to majority of compliant software tools.
Yeah, search engine optimization is a real thing there. Elliot, you look like you had some.
Sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
my bad. That's partially my
Your
fault.
Elliot.
I mean, yeah, you can actually point at me for some of that. No, I do just want to call out, this is actually really interesting that you pointed out the connection with the funding, because that is a new flavor of the symptoms that are impacting pricing and audit quality and commoditized. You know what? I think this is probably the one that I can agree with the most, because it's easy for us to just say the market demands or requires and takes X, Y, and Z, but this is a much better route of just blame the rich people and investors. That seems to be the easier route.
And as I say, the money kind of dilutes everything. Like I've known so many people who have sold a business, right? And do you know that I have never met one person who told me that after they did that it was great? I've never met one person who took private equity who was like, man, they improved our quality. Oh, they improved our processes. We started hiring better people. We started getting happier customers. That's not what happens with all the money. You've got financial leadership. You've got a board that pressures you for acquiring customers. And that's what happened to the compliance in the box people, because their initial objective failed. Okay, they said, we're going to build this software and we're going to get subscribers to subscribe and get SOC 2 ready. Well, when you get in that conversation with people who want to do a SOC 2 audit, a SOC 1 audit, a PCI audit, a HIPAA audit, whatever it is, you get stuck pretty quick because people are like, who's going to do the audit? How long is it going to take? What's the process? What kind of testing are you going to do? Hey, we don't have encryption yet. We're working on logging. What do we need to do about that? And guess what happened? It grinds to the halt this conversation from the people who are trying to sell the software, right? And so they couldn't sell their software without being able to answer that. And so what did they have to do? They had to start embedding the audit firm in the conversation. They had to bring a complete solution in order to get over that hump and sell more contracts. And why did they have pressure to do that? Because of the people in the boardroom who are saying, hey, we want our money back. We want our return. We want to see that you are increasing adoption rate. We want to see that you're gaining subscribers. And so this pressure, this incentive that is coming from the investment caused this to happen. That, well, we can't just sell software. The market won't buy our software unless we can get over the objections. Anybody who's been in sales, anybody who is trying to sell software or some type of solution, you have to have an answer for the objection. And they didn't have one until they started saying, we can bring the whole thing together. We can bring you the auditor too. And that, for me, is where my problem is with all of this. Is that's a line that was crossed that takes away independence, it reduces quality, and it negatively impacts the auditee.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. I was going to ask, what role are these CPA firms playing in this ecosystem that has been created? Because
Yeah.
essentially, not just CPA firms, any audit firms, ISO, PCI, qualified security assessors, they can all be gatekeepers. But are they also private equity funded? And they're also feeding the giant, so to speak.
It's such a strong incentive, the financial aspect of it. And, in the AICPA professional, the code of conduct, I think that this is an adverse interest. You could also say that it's a self-interest, but those are two of the threats that you have to independence and objectivity. And so if I get aligned with someone who is the hot thing and they've got the $300 million to fund advertising, and I don't, one of the gold partners with the Drata Auditor Alliance, like I saw them post not too long ago, they said, yeah, we decided to start our firm and we decided to, align with these tools in order to ride that wave. And, I think they shared their revenue. They were like, we went from 5 million to 10 million in 1 year. And I don't want to double our business in 1 year because it would hurt our customers. It would destroy our firm, to double in size. And most business people would look at me and say, what is wrong with you? What are you talking about? But I'm not a company that's building software who can sell twice the amount of software. I'm a professionally licensed practitioner who cares about cybersecurity and compliance. And I care about whether or not our customers have implemented the right things in order to protect their customers' data. And you have to take a different approach. You can't take a financial approach to that because it harms the very thing. It's diametrically opposed to what the professional code of conduct requires, which is quality and competence and making sure that you assign the right level of qualified personnel to the engagement. And so, how it's affected CPA firms who've become the partners and have doubled in size, I just think that's adverse interest. I think it affects the independence because it's like, yeah, let's ride the wave together. And I don't think that we should be on partner lists.
Yeah. I mean, I asked Kevin, when you do get a chance to listen to it, I asked him if he's ever fed stingrays before. And if you ever have, do you know that when you can go out and feed stingrays and they won't bite your hand? And I said, do you know why? Because you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I asked him, I said, are these audit firms, is their judgment impaired when they do these audits because they're getting revenue? If I get 90% of my revenue from 3 platforms, I need to keep the clients happy. I need that source. I need the source of revenue happy. So can I really audit without a conflict of interest and my judgment being impaired if that's the case? Because I would find it very difficult to audit in that manner if I knew that the result had to go a certain way kind of in order to keep getting their referrals.
And that is happening. I mean, no question, that is happening. I think a very negative impact on us as an audit firm is, we're just auditing along, right? And then we have a finding. And then this has happened to us multiple times. The customer comes back and says, well, I talked to Banta, I talked to Drata, I talked to SecureFrame, whoever, and they said that you shouldn't need that, And I'm like, what is going on here? And so who is the person? Oh, it's a client success manager. Oh, okay. How many audits have they done? And I can argue that all day long, but it's a negative influence on the quality of the audit because the customer's, adverse interest is, man, I just want this to go away. And I don't want Joseph to find this thing and make me change this thing and do this thing. And so I'm going to bring this person to the table. We had one where some terminated employees were still active on the web facing application. And, there was federal data in that. And these people had been terminated past 6 months, right? And so the representative from the compliance tool told them, well, no, that's not, a requirement. You deactivated them. And I was like, yeah, but 6 months later, and so that's an exception. That's something that I have to consider as a reason for qualification of the opinion here. And it became a big thing. Like, we got fired from that engagement over the fact that our opinion was that 6 months was unreasonable. And the client success manager from the tool said that I was wrong, that it was reasonable. And the client went with that opinion, and so that's a very negative impact, that, this trust is built with software developers, people who are providing a software tool. And, they're like trying to get me to be a partner, but yet, they are advancing their interest, which is, we don't want you to fail your audit. Therefore, I need to argue with Joseph about this and keep my customer happy, and that can't be my mindset when I'm doing an audit. And so I'm under different rules than they are. And so we get into a lot of round and round on that kind of stuff.
I'm not surprised. Maybe Kendra and Elliot are.
I'm really not, honestly. Yeah, I'm really not that surprised because I feel like a lot of the times when people go to these tools, they're looking at it as that easy button. But, in that particular case, Joseph, I'm curious, maybe you can dive in a little bit more to that particular engagement. Was that a customer who, was kind of brought to you from the compliance platform? They found you separately? And okay.
Yeah, we had been working, I think they engaged us first on that one, if I remember right, and then they engaged the tool. But, this kind of plays into another negative thing. The scope needs to be defined by the client, okay? And if you want to use a tool, a consultant, knock yourself out. I don't have a problem with that. But it is our job as an auditor to validate that scope. Do you have the right scope? And so this is probably the most frequent interaction that we have with the tools, is that I haven't seen anyone that has the scope right in the tool. And that's because in this case, the client was focused on their cloud environment, right? And so the data that was in the platform was around AWS IAM, right? Well, these accounts for the web-facing application, these weren't AWS accounts. This was a custom-built authentication mechanism for their application, which most SaaS providers have. And so the tool wasn't ingesting the data from that. And so if I had just tested AWS, if I had just tested the data that was in the tool, I would have missed a big thing because their platform was the service, and so, yeah, I can get out of AWS how the developers access things and what the permissions are and what the engineers are doing and what IT is doing. But this was the application that manage the access from their employees to deliver the service. And the tool providers are constantly telling the clients that, no, everything is in Stratum, everything is in Vanta, everything is in, and it's not. I've never seen an engagement where everything is in the tool. And so you have to go beyond that. And it's a fight for people because they're told that everything should be in there. And so then they're shocked when we're like, hey, what about this thing? Like we did a site visit with a client and they had, not had a site visit in 3 years. You know, they were using an audit firm, and that's our third podcast that we're going to do together about site visits. But they were like, yeah, nobody's been here. And so we did that. We kind of followed the data through. Well, guess what we found in a closet? We found a laptop that was a bridge between their development environment and their cloud environment, very critical to the security of their particular system. And you know it, right? There's no agent loaded on that laptop sending data back to their compliance tool. That laptop wasn't getting updated. That laptop hadn't been hardened. You know, that laptop had a shared user account. You know, that laptop wasn't being logged. I mean, you know, big issue, right? That you find. And so everything isn't in there. And unfortunately, the tool providers are telling clients that everything is in there. And it's not true.
Well, I think too, to kind of like double click into that, something that I mentioned as being a big red flag for me when it comes to looking for a quality auditor is when they try to tell you that they're, you know, zero touch audit firm.
Yeah.
I'd love to just put this company on blast right now, but I won't do it. But anyways, Elliot's do it. No, but you know, when they're telling you, hey, we're like a zero touch audit firm and we're partnered so deeply with the Draudas and Vantas and whatever of the world, I think what ends up happening, kind of to your point of like the products are not scoped appropriately, what ends up happening is those audit firms aren't having the conversations with their customers to actually understand fundamentally, like, how does this service work? Like, what actually is under the hood to make everything connect together? And so if you take that surface level, oh, all of my check marks are green, yeah, everything looks great. But unfortunately, that's just not the reality of it. And I think something that I can say, especially for your firm in particular, is that you all do take the time to get to know the product, get to know what's happening under the hood, and really try to surface and make sure that the scope of the audit is adequate and, you know, painting the full picture.
You've got to, if you're calling yourself an auditor, like you have to do that. And it is sickening that audit firms are allowing the tool to let them cut corners and not do that, you know, and just blindly accept the data that's in there. You know, another example that we had was where the green check mark said that these alerts were there, and they were, but the alerts were going to an email address that was unmonitored. Okay, how did my auditor find that? She found it because she interviewed the person and she looked at the evidence and she saw, so she knew that the alerts were enabled. She saw where they were going, and she goes to this person and she says, show me what you do with the alerts when you get them. I want to watch your process. I want to talk through a few examples. And they were like, what are you talking about? And so, you know, yeah, the alerts were there, but nobody was looking at them. And so, you know, you can't stop at the pane of glass, and everybody wants a pane of glass. You know, they want this like easy button, as you called it. They want this place where they can say, oh, everything's right here. And it's just not. Everything is not right there. You are going to have to dig. If you are a quality auditor, you're going to have to dig, and you're going to have to corroborate whether or not this is true. I'm not going to just accept, you know, what a compliance tool is telling me. And really, it was like this before the compliance tools, right? I mean, we had to go look at all kinds of tools. You know, I'm not opposed to technology. I'm not opposed to automation. We had to go and look at the logging tool. We had to go and look at the monitoring tool. We had to go and look at the, you know, key management process that they were doing. You had to go and look at all this. And I think it's great to pull it all together and organize it as much as you can. But it's a bridge too far to say, aha, now you don't have to look at anything else because we've done that. And that's what's happening. And that's what's causing the problems for audit firms to be able to say they're doing a quality audit.
Can I just expand a little bit on that? So I think on our laundry list of many things, and maybe part 10 of this series, we were thinking about like, how do auditors or anyone trust the information that comes out of the platform? And I think it depends on what evidence or details that they provide to everyone. I'm curious, is that part of the equation here that you're bringing up? I'm sure each platform presents that information different ways, but Yeah, what is your perspective on that? Like, how do you trust it or do you not?
Yeah, I totally agree with something that Troy posted not too long ago, which is I have to validate the source, of where this stuff is coming from. So I'm not sure that the tool saves me any time. I definitely think, okay, there are some things about saving the customer time with what they're doing, but it doesn't save me any time. And everybody's looking at me. The compliance tool provider is looking at me, and the client is looking at me and saying, Joseph, reduce time, reduce costs. If you want to work with us, then you are going to have to do that. And I'm like, that's undue, that's another threat to independence, undue influence. You guys are using your position to cause me to go, okay, well, I'll cut some corners here and not do that validation. And I can't, I was born this way. I can't not look, and that's why I'm an auditor. That's why I got into this, because these are my genetics. But I want to know, how you set it up and what a GRC leader from a tool, I can't remember which tool it was now, on LinkedIn just recently posted criticism of an auditor for asking for the population in a type 1 audit. And they did this shaking my head, emoji, and I was like, wait a minute, I want to know the population of the environment if I'm issuing a type 1 report. I'm not testing operating effectiveness, but I am issuing an opinion on whether or not the controls are properly designed. And he said in his post that you could just look at one system to see that it was implemented, and you would know that it is, properly designed, suitably designed. And I disagree with that. And again, this is a case of a tool provider and a GRC leader, criticizing what the auditor is doing. And I just think that our purposes are parting ways. It's like they're trying to lower the impact to the customer because that's how they earn favor with the customer. Hey, we delivered on what we promised to you. The auditor didn't have to look as much. The auditor didn't have to dig deep. And meanwhile, I'm over here going, no, I want to know the population of the environment. I want to know if you have implemented, your endpoint detection system on more than just one system before I say that it's suitably designed. That's not testing operating effectiveness. That's determining whether the control is suitably designed. And so I just think that we are philosophically different, right? Someone who's designing and selling software has one objective, and someone who's issuing an independent audit opinion has a different objective.
100%. Troy?
So are these are all fake audits, right? It's your favorite term to use.
Are my audits fake?
No, not yours. All this is leading to fake.
I want you to
audits.
say it. I want you to say that my audits are fake.
No, I don't think your audits are
think
fake.
it's a
I don't
fake
think
audit.
anybody's audit is fake, but I'm curious
Yeah.
what fake audit means to you.
Yeah, I think these attitudes that have emerged over the years of having no exceptions is a good thing. That's a belief that's out there. I see press releases, for people who use, and they're crediting the tool, and they're saying, we had no exceptions. Our very first type 2 audit, we had no exceptions. I'm like, well, you got a fake audit. I haven't even looked at it, and I know that you got a fake audit. For someone who's doing a type 2 audit for the first time, I'm sorry, but I don't believe it. I think that's a fake audit. I think a fake audit is when, we got a new client recently who came to us who said, we don't want to use the audit firm that the tool recommended to us because the auditor that we got had 2 months of experience and could not explain to us how the SOC 2 criteria applied to our environment. I think working with someone like that is a fake audit, somebody who has no business doing an audit. I think someone who says, oh, we are going to review your evidence using AI, and we're just going to use the boilerplate description of controls out of the tool, and we're going to use the results that come out of the tool. I think that's a fake audit. I'm sure.
Do you think there's certain firms where if you knew who did them, you would just assume it's a fake
Yeah.
audit?
Yeah.
That's my recycling bin that we talked about before, Troy. I got one today and I was just like,
Is
Piece
it
of crap.
isn't reputation the thing for anyone who's professionally licensed? You know, like I'll go back to the contractor, you know, somebody who does plumbing. You know, isn't reputation everything? I mean, if you are known as the, you know, contractor who doesn't deliver on their promises and does shoddy work, you know, you're going to have these complaints, and you know your license may or may not be affected. I mean, when I've had friends, I'm a troubleshooter, and so like friends come to me to help them troubleshoot, and there was one time where they're like, we gave this guy $5,000 and he never came back, you know. And I said, well, did you check to see if he's licensed? Because we can go to the licensing board and we can file a complaint. No, I didn't do that. And I went and looked, wasn't licensed, you know. So then you just don't have a lot of like recourse, you know. You got to go after civil action. Turned out he had all kinds of judgments against him. But isn't reputation the thing? I mean, for a doctor or, you know, a
It
lawyer.
is, but, you know, I'll tell you when I do want shoddy and cheap work, when I need something fixed and I'm moving next week from my house.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
So in that case, I don't care who's doing the work because I want it for the cheapest and lowest price possible, quickest. Just get it done because I'm moving. I don't care. It's the next owner's problem.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of making a metaphor here towards like there's people that want the lowest and cheapest, right? People
I-
don't care.
I understand that there's a place for that in the market. I do think that, and I've already seen evidence of this, you know, something that I'm very appreciative for with the compliance tools is that they are bringing more people into the market. Okay. There are people who wouldn't have done the audit before that feel like, oh, I can do it now. 2 weeks, $5,000. Yeah, let's do it. You know, it's the barrier to entry is so much lower. And so they're bringing more people in. And so it gives us an opportunity to convert those people later. And, you know, and so that's a good thing because that is happening. You know, hey, I got my first one or two because I had to do it. I had a customer demanding it. I had to do it quickly. You know, I had to do it to win this contract or whatever. But eventually the light bulb goes off, especially if they get some pushback from a customer. And they start going, wait a minute, I've never met my auditor before. Wait, they didn't even test this thing over here that I'm concerned about. You know, there are people who have that. And so they start saying, maybe this should be done differently. And so that's a good thing. You know, it makes it very easy for us to position ourselves in the market to say, we're not that, we're this. Which one do you want? And so that's been a good thing for us. That's helped our brand.
I think the problem with that, however, is that you need people to then have that light bulb moment to say, hey, we want better, we want to do better for our customers.
Yeah.
And this is something that we've touched on quite a few times during some of these conversations. It's like, what is the objective? You know, is the objective to just get that piece of paper so that you can sell to your customer? If so, then why wouldn't you try and get out of that for as cheap and as quick as you possibly can? But then, you know, you have people like me start at your company and fire your audit firm right away and get rid of your stupid automation tools because they're just costing you money and not even giving you the right data. And, you know, that's when that kind of shift starts to happen. Or, you know, if we continue to reject enough of the attestation reports from these fake audit firms, as you mentioned, like maybe that's when that shift happens. But I don't have enough faith in humanity to believe that we're going to make a positive change on our own accord to actually say, hey, we actually care about this enough to switch to a firm like KirkpatrickPrice to produce that report, unfortunately.
First of all, I'm a realist, you know, and I tell my team, we're not after the whole pie. I don't want all the customers, you know. Again, that's the beauty of not having private equity in the boardroom because they're like, they're pushing you to get it all. And that's just not realistic in this business. You know, that's not why Troy and I are in business. We're not trying to get everybody. We're trying to serve, you know, the customers well. And so I tell my team all the time, this is the market. And this is the part of the market we want. We're going after the people who do care about cybersecurity and compliance. We want the market who does want a thorough audit. We want, like I met a new customer, this was about a year or so ago, and they said to me, now, if we fail this audit, it will be a good thing. And I'm like, aha, that's like the attitude that I want. That's the role of audit. The role of audit is to tell you the truth about.
Was I that customer?
Did you say that? But, and their point was we need to be real with management, about what's going on here. And so, that's the customer that we want. And so I have to have hope for humanity in all of this because, people say, oh, the AICPA should do something. The AICPA is not going to do anything about this. And, people are always looking to them. It's just not their mission. They publish the standards, they do the training, they create the content for the exam, but they're not going to inspect results, and they don't have it's kind of like when I criticize colleges for teaching cybersecurity. I'm like, that's not the best place to go to get your cybersecurity training because they're 4 or 5 years behind, right? And it's the same with the AICPA. Like they're not going to teach the peer reviewers now when they test the access controls, make sure that they looked at the actual service that has a different authentication mechanism than the production environment. They're just not going to do that. That's not where it's going to come from. And I think that it is up to us as practitioners when, oh man, who was it posted the other day? I thought it was so great. It was Paul, I can't remember his last name, but he posted about, here's how you change. I was reviewing this for our customer and I pushed back on the audit reports for their vendors, and that is how we're going to do it. Yep. And, this thing about gold and silver and bronze, that audit firms are involved in, and this is my call out because I am a one person at a time. I think that you eat the elephant a bite at a time. I'm not trying to make some broad sweeping thing, but if you will join me on not being on the partner pages, we can't be on the partner pages. I'm not your partner. Don't call me your brother either. Because you're selling a software solution, that's great. Knock yourself out. You sell it, and then I'm going to do my audit over here, and I'm going to use your tool. That's fine. But I'm also going to go and I'm going to look at other sources for the evidence that I need. And if one by one, if each firm would remove themselves from this like partnership page, it takes away that power that the tools have to say, we'll bring a partner, to the table. And I know we won't get everybody off of that because the influence is too strong. But if I get you guys off of there, and then you guys help me get the next people off of there, and then we get somebody else off of there, and then you're left with the reputation issue of where people are like, well, these are the people who, kind of, ignore their values to, just for the sake of getting business. But that's what I think we need to do. And that's the humanity that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the practitioners to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to accept this, because that's what the audit firms are going to have to do.
I'll have to talk about that internally.
Well, so Joseph, at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about your firm being fired by a customer because of the information coming out of these platforms. But have you had any situations where maybe you've had a customer who was going to use, the automation tool along with KirkpatrickPrice for their audit, and by the time they got done with the audit with you, they were like, well, geez, this platform didn't actually help us all that much. We still had to go and do, all of this manual work, but we know we got a really quality audit, and then ended up trashing the compliance?
I don't know that has actually happened because one of our values here at KirkpatrickPrice is like approaching these engagements with the heart of a teacher we try to teach people how to use it, and we want to teach them what it is and what it's not, you know? And so usually when we get to the end of it, they're, yeah, you know, we see now that this is what it's here for and this is what we're doing. But I'm sure glad that you looked at these other things because we found things that we needed to do. So I don't, you know, we don't go in and trash the tools.
Oh no, I'm not saying it from that perspective,
Yeah.
but I'm saying more from the perspective of, you know, a customer getting to the end and being like, oh wow, well, I guess I could probably just get this out of my budget because I'm still having to do all this extra work anyway, and just, you know, continue to partner with you exclusively.
I haven't seen that specific scenario.
Okay.
Now,
Interesting.
I have gone through audits before that, and this is a really big point. I want to say this to the compliance audit tools who are listening, if they're still listening at this point.
Oh, they're all listening.
I want to say this. You know, there is an issue that you haven't addressed that is very difficult to address, and that is just human nature about feeling judged, about not wanting to be transparent, you know, not giving access. Some of the tools think that these clients are going to put agents on everything. They're not. They don't trust it. It makes them nervous. They don't want to do that. And so you're missing things, right? And so we go in so many times and they have a tool and I say, yes, add us as your auditor, put us in the auditor role. And they won't do it because they're like, yeah, we'll look into that. And it's because they don't want us in there. And it like defeats the purpose of the tool there. And it's just sheer nervousness. They're like, we don't want you to have direct access to see what's actually happening. And the other issue is sometimes they're embarrassed because they haven't set it up fully. You know, like I helped on an audit recently where they had just put all their policies and procedures in there. And that was all they had done. And so it was just documentation. There was no evidence and they hadn't done that. And so they shied away from giving us access. And so I've definitely seen people at the end of the audit who didn't use the tool, you know, and they didn't populate it. I just haven't been privy to, and then they canceled it. You know, I haven't seen that. But I definitely do see a lot where people are just not using it, you know, because you got to have somebody who's responsible for it. And, you know, if you've got a SaaS provider and if the compliance tool has sold it to the CEO of that company and the CEO has an assigned responsibility for somebody to make sure that it's, you know, set up and it's working and all that. As an auditor, I'm going to get to that. There's not going to be any information in there. So it's just going to be garbage, you know, and it's just not going to be useful. And, you know, that kind of thing happens quite a bit. But yeah, we talk them through that. We try to help them figure out how to use it. And it's usually just resetting expectations because they've been told in the sales process that it's the end all be all and everything's going to, and that's something that the tool providers have to do to get the sale sometimes.
Have any of the
Indeed.
platform providers asked you to do shady business practices in terms of pricing?
Oh, yeah. Shady. Fake.
How do these conversations go?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what did they ask you
No.
to do?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's where, you know, we have to stand up as practitioners and say, no, that I can't do that. You know, this is undue influence. This is familiarity. This is self-interest. You know, these are things that would take away the value that I'm bringing to this customer. You have no place in this. You know, you shouldn't be the one finding the auditor who won't do meetings. You know, that happened to us one time where the provider came to us and we said, we got this deal, but you can't have any meetings with the customer. They don't want to meet. They just want you to get all. And I was like, I'm sorry, but we don't do that. You know, Vanta wanted us to lower our pricing, you know, and you see, that's the other thing that I looked at, you know, when you look at these pages, this is why I say just one by one, we have to get the audit firms off of these pages because, you know, it's right here on the partner pages, you know, cost-effective pricing for Vanta customers, AI-powered audits integrated within Vanta. Vanta clients receive discounted pricing. 100% satisfaction guarantee. You can't make that statement as a professionally licensed CPA firm. You can't offer 100% satisfaction guarantee.
Yeah.
40% discount on audit services for clients using Vanta. 25% discount on all ISO training.
Now, I presume, Joseph, that when they're asking you to lower your price as a CPA firm, it's due to the fact that they are of the belief that their compliance automation platform is so fantastic
Yeah.
that it's going to reduce your workload by so much that
Right.
it's okay. You can afford to take a little bit less money. But I mean, it doesn't sound like through this conversation it has lessened your workload at all. I mean, being partnered with these firms or not, you're still continuing to take the approach of a very hands-on audit, making sure that you're, lifting up the rug to find the problems that go deeper than what these platforms are checking. So like, how do you give feedback to those automation platforms when they ask you to do that with this whole desire to say, oh, we're going to save you guys time and money? What's your feedback to them?
I'm a very black and white person, so
Sure.
I don't engage very much in the conversation. I just say, go jump in a lake. That's why we're not on the pages, because that's the approach that I've taken. We are a very technical audit firm. We've been using tools and scripts for 15 years to collect data during audits, but I'm not going to, replace that with, we're going to pre-package it for you and give it to you, and you just have to trust it. And we're not certified, we're not licensed, we're not trained, we're not experienced. That's where we part ways. And so if you're coming at it at the very beginning of, hey, if you want this business, you have to lower your price, because the other offer with that is, and we'll bring you more. And that's where a CPA firm has to say no.
First hit's free.
That's not acceptable. Like, you can't incentivize us with that. It's kind of like the CTO one time of a big company that a lot of people use. We had discovered in our audit that they were not encrypting their data in the database, and their control description said that they were. And so we had to issue a qualified opinion because it was a serious issue. This was their other customer data. And the CTO met with me and he said, we are expanding. We're going to be doing additional audits for additional product lines. If you issue this opinion, then you will not, get this other business. And so I sent a letter to the audit committee, did all the things. Nobody cared. But I have to say no. I have to say, go jump in a lake. I have to issue the opinion based on that. I cannot take financial incentive, into account. And so when you've got this audit alliance program that incentivizes you with, you'll get more business when you go to silver, you'll get more business when you go to gold. What are we doing? Am I trying to get like a credit card in my wallet here? Am I trying to get, it's just like, we can't play those games. And so those are the conversations that do happen. You can't meet with them. You have to accept everything that's in there. You have to do certain pricing. We're going to bring you more business if you'll do that. I don't consider that a partnership that I can play in. Not to mention that they contact my existing clients and try to get them to switch to the people who will be more favorable on their product. That's not a partner. That's not a partner, somebody who goes, and that's happened multiple times.
Yeah. That was actually going to be a question of mine. Is I'm curious if there are things happening in the market where these automation platforms are trying to steer people away from audit firms who are doing a little
absolutely.
bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just had one last week where the customer had layoffs, that kind of thing is going on, and they laid off everybody but one technology person. I think his title is Director of Compliance or Director of Technology and Compliance or something like that. And so they were moving down to one person, and they were like, hey, we're switching to this tool, and they're embedding an auditor. They didn't know who the auditor was. The auditor was included in the price. The price was half of what we were charging. They were like, we didn't come to you because it was half, and like we just didn't think that you could do it. And they were right about that. We weren't going to do it for half. But like they had that pressure because they were trying to accomplish something. And so guess who can offer a solution that meets that objective? The
A no-touch
compliance
rubber stamp
tool.
audit firm.
Yeah, we can. So they have the solution for that. And so, if they had come to me, I would have had a conversation with them about, okay, what can we do to help in the coming year with going from, I think they were going from 4 to 1 or something. But yeah, it's attractive. It's very attractive to the market to be able to just get an easier audit. And we just need to go. And people say that to me in these situations. Sometimes they're like, we really appreciate your work. We really got a lot from your team, but we really need to do this right now just to get a reprieve from audit, and it's just like you're missing the whole thing. But, I have been around long enough. Our firm has been in business 20 years. Those people, some of them come back. And we just had one recently come back who said, I got 0 recommendations. Didn't get the level of testing that we got before. I was used to getting this letter of management from your team with all these things that we needed to do to improve. We were kind of used to taking that and creating a plan for, implementing those things. I got none of that, and we missed that. And so now we see, the value of working, and they named our particular auditor that they liked working with. And, so people come back. You just have to be patient. And guess what? I can be patient because I don't have private equity board members breathing down my neck. It's the way to go. We're doing what we're doing for the right reason and not for profit. Obviously, we have to make a profit to pay our employees and stay in business. But if you've got a customer that represents 25% of your income and they threaten to leave if you don't, ignore some results of testing. Like we had a client, again, another household name company that people do business with. They told us what the scope was. We discovered all the development access, all the administrative access was in China. And so we told them, hey, we're going to have to disclose this in the audit report. And they said, we don't want you to disclose that. Why? We don't want our customers to know that there's a China connection. They were very honest about it. And so they left us and they went to another firm that doesn't say in the report that it's China who develops and administrates the environment. And so they left. But, if that customer represented 25% of our business,
Be hard to turn that down.
It's hard,
yeah,
but
is.
that's why these rules exist. That's why you have to do your ethics training.
This is why I take a lot of SOC 2 reports and I throw them in the trash because I know
but
they're
somebody's
junk.
got to enforce the rules,
Yeah,
and that's
but who?
We're expecting self-policing, and that's just not going to work.
Yeah, who would find out about that though, Troy? Like, who would find out that company fired me? What you're supposed to do for anybody out there who's reading audit reports, if you see that a company has changed auditors, you are supposed to ask, why. You should investigate the previous report that was issued to see if there was some reason for opinion shopping. Okay? If there's a suspiciously missing audit report, if there's like a gap, that's probably the one they're not sending you, So you should do that. Audit firms are supposed to investigate why someone is switching off of their old audit firm. You're supposed to know. But no one ever contacts me. Nobody ever says, hey, why did they fire you? Because we discovered that all their developers and IT was in China and they did not like that we told them that we were going to disclose that. Nobody asked me, and you're supposed to do that. And so I don't know who's going to enforce the rules on this? Who has visibility into it, you know?
That's the problem. That's what I'm
That's the
trying to
big
get
question.
at. That's exactly what I mean. I mean, well,
I'm just saying, if you do it, Troy, and I do it, then that's two of us.
except we're not getting. I don't get any. I've had zero work come from the platforms this year.
It's because, and you know why that is, Troy? It's because you keep squashing that SOC 2 is a certification, and that's really breaking their hearts. So,
No, we actually we talk to the platforms and tell them like we don't want the only customers we want referrals from are certain types of customers. So we want to be your trusted, high quality firm. Don't send us these other ones.
And they don't contact you with those opportunities?
If they do, we don't even respond.
Yeah.
I
mean, doesn't that prove the point? I mean, doesn't that prove that's not their message? That's not their objective. That's not their philosophy. Because if it was, they wouldn't sell as much. And, you know,
It's not, but I will ask you this one last question because I saw a post today, and it's a challenge and a problem that I will never have an answer to because none of it makes sense. So I see a post, somebody talking about SOC 2. Maybe you saw it today. I don't know who. I don't remember who it was, but it talks about this. We need SOC 2 to do this. Like there's low quality audit firms, and then at the end they talk about you should work with firms like A, B, C, and D. These firms are the ones you are talking about.
I saw that.
Okay, now these firms, and maybe some of them are good firms, but the point is, my point is that people think that the firms you're talking about, and I'm talking about, are high quality.
Yeah.
And so how do we can say education all we want, we could say this and say this, but there's something being fundamentally missed or something has happened in the past 5 years more than just the platforms. Like people don't understand, or there's other aspects of security where there's a bunch of fakeness going on in all the security and it's all just collaborating and we're getting this. And this is just one unfortunate consequence of a industry that's completely broken in general. That's what that post made me think.
Yeah, I saw that one and I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, great. This guy is nailing it. And then he got to the end and he named a firm that I was like, that firm doesn't do a good job. And it's obvious, like when you read the reports, you know, it's just kind of obvious what's missing, you know. And so, yeah, it's like just not even an understanding of what quality means. And, you know, peer review, people talk about the peer review process. Our peer reviewer doesn't look at that. You know, they don't look at how well we technically tested the control. You know, they're more about process, right?
Yeah, just a system of quality management or whatever it's quality management system.
They would never identify if we didn't dig into an inadequate cipher suite, you know. And so
they wouldn't know what a cipher suite was.
Right. And so, you know, so how do you like raise the bar? How do you elevate like quality standards? Like for us, again, because we've been around for so long, like when we started, I just kind of stumbled into it because I didn't know. I had a technical background. I was a technical person. And then I started auditing and people started telling me, oh, you're much more thorough than what I get from the Big Five. It was the Big Five back then. And so I realized, I was like, oh, this is my thing. You know, I'm competing against a 23-year-old out of college who's a CPA but doesn't have any technical experience. And so very quickly that became kind of our thing that we would talk about. And so yeah, Big Five firm, reputable name, but it's a fake audit because this person has never operated, they've never configured Active Directory before, and they don't know how to test it.
And they're paying 6 figures for the audit? That seems like a different problem.
And so I don't see, and again, that's not the battle we're fighting today. It's going to go away.
Yeah, that's back in the days of when the logo on your report meant more than the content
Right.
on the inside.
So it's a different issue, but it's the same issue on, you got this report and they didn't test things adequately, because that's what the big five were doing. They weren't testing things adequately. We took over an audit one time from Grant Thornton, and the customer said, we're switching to you because we want a more thorough audit. And this was a big payroll provider. And one of the first things that I had to meet with them about was, hey, you're not logging. They didn't have any logs. And they were like, well, we don't keep the logs. Our auditor never said that was an issue. That's not an issue. And I was like, okay, but your policy says that you keep critical logs from critical systems for 12 months. And they looked at me and said, you actually read our policies? And I was like, yeah, that's what I enjoy, reading policies.
That's what we're supposed to be auditing you against.
Yeah. And so then we got into this big thing. And, I eventually met with the, senior person. I was like, you guys said that you wanted a more thorough audit, and that's what this is. It's pretty dangerous that you don't have any logs. Like, you can't do any investigation. You can't, you can't have a leg to stand on in your incident response process, all that kind of stuff. And so they went back to the previous auditor because they didn't ask about logs. And so how do we elevate, and how do we let people know that these are the things that need to be tested, and that it is important, and that, an automated tool isn't enough, and you do have to corroborate, and you do have to know do these people know what to do with the logs? There's so much to do. And so I criticize our industry, but I also see my role as I am trying to win one heart and one mind at a time with this, and that's really all I can do. And so I try to win over each customer and, each competitor and each tool provider. I don't talk to the tool providers very much, but I do try to beat this drum, because we all do need to do a better job. It is up to us. If a doctor is going into surgery, they shouldn't be about, the American Medical Association really needs to do a better job of monitoring what's going on. No, you just need to do a better job with your patients and make sure that you're delivering on that, because the word gets out, and, people notice when you're a better doctor.
Except, I will say one difference is, though, when you do issue an audit report, it is meant for the public. So the public is relying on us to have good quality. That's, I think, a huge thing, that the public wants us to make sure the ecosystem is quality, and we're not doing a good job of it, whoever's supposed to be, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm sure this happens in other types of audits, not just SOC 2, right? Financial. We've named them. I'm sure there's issues. But
just look at the annual reports on the inspections that the PCAOB does. The big four, it's 30-something% did not meet the standards. It's definitely a big problem all the way around.
Well, I don't think the public has had, I don't know. Yeah, no, we could keep talking for an hour, but we've been talking for an hour.
We've been talking for an hour.
And I'm sure we can have a part 2 and 3 for sure.
I just want to motivate us all to do more. We talk about elevating the standards over here at Kirkpatrick Price, and that just means we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and do the best job possible. And that does have influence on people. And, that's what I espouse, and that's what I'm trying to get people to do.
Integrity and independence. That was, I think, a big part of this conversation today.
I like it. It's a good way to end.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
Well,
that takes
Elliot?
us to the end of the episode. So I will wrap this up. I love when I don't have to talk.
I want to add one thing. I do want to tell
Fine,
people
fine.
that. I want to add
Add
one thing,
thing.
Elliot. I want to add one thing. My son, because of this podcast, I have to thank Elliot for making me do this. My son thinks I'm really cool because I have a podcast now. He keeps telling me that. And he really wants to listen to it because he thinks I'm cool. And he tells people that his dad has his own podcast now at school. So thanks, Elliot. You made me cool.
Now we
But
really
then
have
when he
to
listens
get you
to
merch.
auditors talk.
Yeah, well, he doesn't know
Play
what
it
it's
for him when
about.
he
If
goes
he
to
knew, I
bed.
wouldn't be cool anymore. But we'll make him think it's a really cool topic, and we'll leave it at
Yeah.
that.
I don't think I contributed to that.
All right,
You did.
now you can go, Elliot.
We do have a punk rock intro outro, so it gets cool until we start.
That's why he
talking.
thought it was cool when he saw it initially, and I showed it to him. He's here. You have your own podcast. This is cool because he saw the intro. That's what I'm saying. You did a good job. There you go.
Awesome. I'll take it. We're the only people that will make GRC cool, apparently. So, Joseph, thank you so much for joining. The perspective that you provided, especially when we get an opportunity to poke at VCs and PE firms, that's always fun. That's a great topic. But I think this is like a nice attachment to every other piece of the equation, that it's just obviously a much larger piece of the pie. That it's not just the market. There's a whole lot of other factors that impact things. But your directness and your black and white approach here has been super helpful, and I feel like our listeners are going to really appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining in and doing that.
Yeah.
Kendra, thank you for kicking us off and doing more talking than I have to do, which I love. TJ,
No problem.
thanks for saying our podcast cool. All right, now going to get us merch, I guess. That's not crappy. So we'll go from there. That's it. All right, we'll see you. I don't know. This is probably in January, but yeah, see you next episode. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to GRC Uncensored, the podcast, where Troy and Kendra know their shit, and our producer just talks shit. To learn more about GRC, go to grcuncensored.com. Subscribe to our newsletter, or join our community on Reddit. Viewpoints expressed during the show do not reflect the brands, employers, or companies of our hosts, guests, or sponsors.